Welcome to Passport to Sleep, a calming journey through real places and dreamy escapes. Let's begin tonight's story. The high-speed train hums into Suzhou just after midday, sliding through green fields and shimmering canals with a quiet grace. Outside the window, the landscape is flat and endless, dotted with lotus ponds, bamboo groves, and the occasional small whitewashed house crouched beneath a stand of willows. We step off the train into the soft warmth of early afternoon. The air feels heavy with moisture, fragrant with something ancient and green. Somewhere beyond the bustle of the station, the older heart of Suzhou waits for us. A tangle of stone bridges, slow-moving canals, and gardens stitched together by centuries of patience and art. A short ride carries us into the old town. The modern city fades quickly behind us, replaced by narrow streets lined with low white buildings, crowned with black tiled roofs that curve upward at the corners like the wings of cranes. The canals here are quiet, their waters the colour of green glass, catching and reflecting the slow movement of the clouds above. Our guest house is tucked into a side alley, just wide enough for two people to walk shoulder to shoulder. It is a converted merchant's house, a building that seems to exhale history with every creak of its ancient wooden beams. Inside, the courtyard is paved with river stones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and a gnarled plum tree stretches its twisted limbs skyward from a bed of moss. The room is small, but perfect. A low-lacquered bed sits beneath a wooden lattice window that opens onto the canal beyond. From here, we can see the water drifting past in slow silence, the occasional duck sending out lazy ripples that bend the reflections of the old houses lining the banks. We leave the window open, letting the scent of water and flowering vines seep into the room. Suzhou feels softer than the world we left behind, like a dream held together by mist and memory. After dropping our bags, we step back out into the light, following a crooked alley that leads toward one of the city's most famous treasures, the humble administrator's garden, or Zhuozheng Yuan, a place built not for emperors or generals, but for a retired scholar seeking peace in a world too loud for him. The entrance to the garden is simple, almost hidden, a low gate half covered by a flowering vine. We pass beneath it and step into a different world. The air changes immediately. The sounds of the street fall away. The light softens, fractured by the delicate lacework of bamboo leaves swaying overhead. Before us, the garden stretches out, a labyrinth of pavilions, winding stone paths, shallow pools filled with drifting lotus leaves, and rockeries sculpted into miniature mountains. The entire space is a carefully choreographed illusion of nature, every curve and shadow arranged to seem effortless, every view framed like a living painting. We wander slowly, our footsteps muffled by the soft stone beneath us. The pools mirror the sky, capturing the slow drift of clouds and the occasional dragonfly skimming the surface. Goldfish dart beneath the water lilies, their movements sending ripples across the mirrored world. We pass through small pavilions where the air smells of aged wood and the faint, ghostly sweetness of distant blossoms. Each building is named like a poem: the fragrant isle, the faraway pavilion, the withered lotus retreat. And every window opens onto a different view. A patch of bamboo trembling in the breeze, a winding bridge of stone slabs arching low over a hidden stream, a wall covered in the twisting shadows of climbing vines. There are no straight paths here, no hurry, only turns and pauses, revelations and quiet. In one courtyard, we find an old pine tree that leans heavily over a reflecting pond, its needles brushing the water. The tree's trunk twists like a calligrapher's brushstroke, rough and blackened with age. We sit on a stone bench nearby, letting the garden fold around us. The breeze carries the scent of water and earth, of moss and lotus flowers. Somewhere, hidden among the corridors and winding walls, a flute player sends out a slow, mournful melody that seems stitched into the very fabric of the afternoon. For a long while we sit without speaking, the world slowing to the rhythm of the garden. The air grows heavier as the sun drops lower, the shadows deepening into soft pools at the base of the walls. It is not a grand place, not a garden built to awe with size or power. It is a garden meant to be entered like a dream and left like a memory. And so we rise quietly and drift back out into the city, carrying its stillness with us. The streets beyond the garden are narrower now, older, the crowds thin. The modern noise of scooters and buses fades into the background, replaced by the creak of old doors, the trickle of water under low bridges, the occasional bark of a dog behind a courtyard wall. We find ourselves on Pingjiang Road, the heart of ancient Suzhou. The street runs alongside a narrow canal, its banks lined with stone and old trees, whose roots twist down into the water like fingers. Shops and tea houses crowd the lanes, their wooden signs hanging low from carved beams. Red lanterns sway from every doorway, their surfaces painted with calligraphy that catches the late afternoon light. The smells here are thick and layered, grilling skewers sizzling with cumin and pepper, sweet osmanthus pastries cooling on bamboo trays, the smoky bite of roasted chestnuts curling from iron pans. We duck into a tiny tea house, almost hidden behind a heavy wooden door carved with swirling dragons. Inside, the world contracts again. The air is rich with the scent of tea leaves and sandalwood. Small wooden tables are scattered across a floor paved with cracked stone tiles. An old woman moves quietly between the tables, carrying kettles that breathe out soft clouds of steam. We choose a table near a window overlooking the canal. The water drifts past, carrying a few fallen leaves that spin slowly in the current. The tea arrives in a delicate porcelain pot, blue and white and chipped at the rim. We pour it carefully into small cups no bigger than the hollows of our palms. The tea is light, fragrant, tasting of green hills and distant rain. We sip slowly, letting the warmth fill our hands, our chests, the spaces between our breaths. Outside, the sky begins to shift, the light softening to a deeper gold. The white walls of the houses across the canal catch the last fire of the sun, their reflections rippling into fractured patterns across the water. A man poles a small boat down the canal, his silhouette long and thin against the glowing water. The boat moves almost without sound, the pole dipping and rising like a slow heartbeat. We sit until the tea cools, until the world outside softens and deepens into dusk. The evening settles around Suzhou like a slow, heavy shawl. We walk back along the canal, the stones still warm underfoot, the lanterns above us just beginning to glow. Their light pools gently on the water, red and gold, catching in the ripples like falling stars. The shops along Pingjiang Road light paper lanterns at their doors, musicians set up along the bridges, their songs soft and plaintive, stitched into the dark. We follow the canal until it opens into a small square where a restaurant spills light and laughter out into the night. The tables are set close together, under an awning threaded with fairy lights. The air smells of ginger, garlic, and something sweet and sharp we can't quite name. We sit at a table near the edge, where we can watch the canal slipping by in the dark. Dinner is slow and rich. Plates of river shrimp flash-fried with salt and chili arrive first, crackling hot and bright on the tongue. A bowl of noodles follows, slick with sesame oil and crowned with slivers of cucumber and green onion. There is a dish of sweet and sour mandarin fish, its skin lacquered and crisp, the meat beneath soft as a whisper. We eat slowly, savouring every bite, every moment. The wine is pale and dry, cutting through the richness of the food with a whisper of apples and stone. The night deepens, the lanterns glow brighter, throwing reflections onto the water that seem to shimmer and dance with the current. The music drifts to us from across the square, slow and aching and perfect. We stay long after the plates are cleared, sipping tea and watching the boats drift past, their passengers wrapped in shawls against the cool breath of the river. The stars are faint tonight, veiled by the moisture of the air, but the night feels full of light nonetheless. When we finally rise to leave, the streets are nearly empty. We walk slowly back toward our guest house, the canal always at our side, the lanterns always guiding us home. The night is soft, smelling of water and earth, and the old stones beneath our feet feel alive with the weight of all the footsteps that have passed here before us. The air hums with the memory of tea and laughter, of drifting boats and gardens caught between breath and dream. We slip through the courtyard gate and climb the narrow stairs to our room. Outside, the water moves endlessly past the window. Inside, the air holds the scent of flowering vines and river mist. We fall asleep with the window open, the sound of the canal weaving through our dreams like a slow, endless song. Morning wakes gently in Suzhou. From our open window, the air drifts in soft and sweet, carrying the scent of damp stone, river mist, and something lighter. Perhaps the faint perfume of distant osmanthus blooms. Below, the canal moves slowly, a ribbon of muted green, reflecting the low silver sky. A small boat glides past, its lone occupant poling gently along, the tip of his pole drawing long ripples behind him that fold and vanish into the morning. We dress slowly, drawn into the pace of the city, where no one seems to hurry except the swallows darting in quick flashes across the sky. Stepping into the courtyard, the stones are still cool underfoot, the day not yet warmed by the rising sun. We wander into the streets in search of breakfast. The town is quieter now than it was even last night, the shops still shuttered, the stalls only beginning to rattle to life. A small cafe tucked into the corner of an old courtyard draws us in with the scent of steam and bread. Inside, the space is simple, low wooden beams darkened by centuries of smoke, paper lanterns still faintly glowing from the night. We sit at a table near an open window, where the breeze stirs the edges of a red silk curtain. A smiling woman in a flowered apron brings us bowls of warm soy milk and plates of small crisp pastries filled with sesame and sweet bean. The soy milk is earthy and rich, almost nutty, and the pastries crumble into sugar and warmth on the tongue. It is simple, perfect, filling in a way no grand breakfast ever could be. Afterward, we return to the heart of Suzhou, following the old stone paths back toward Pingjiang Road. In the morning light, Pingjiang feels even more dreamlike than before. The canals slip by in slow, secretive bends, the houses leaning toward the water as if to share whispered confidences. Red lanterns bob gently in the faint breeze, their reflections stirring in the canal below like drops of spilled ink. The shops begin to open one by one, wooden doors creaking, fabric signs unrolling from hooks. A calligrapher brushes long, deliberate strokes onto rice paper outside his door. His brush moves like a dancer, light and swift, the characters flowing into existence in a rhythm older than memory. Further along, a weaver spins thread on a bamboo wheel, her hands steady and practiced, the thread gleaming fine and strong as spider silk. The smell of green tea roasting in iron pans drifts through the air, fresh and sharp. Drawn by the scent, we slip into a tea house where the world seems to contract into the murmur of water and the dry rustle of leaves. Inside, the space is dim and warm. The walls are lined with shelves stacked high with jars, tight coils of Bilawatchan tea, pale dried jasmine blossoms, dark pu'er bricks wrapped in paper. An elderly man with a face like crumpled paper and bright, sharp eyes bows and gestures to a low table set near a screen of painted silk. We sit cross-legged on small cushions. The tea ceremony unfolds slowly, a ritual of water and patience. He warms the small clay pot with steaming water, then carefully measures the leaves, tiny, twisted green tendrils, and lets them bloom in the pot's belly. The first pour is brief, rinsing, waking the leaves. The second pour is for tasting. The tea is delicate beyond words. It tastes of spring mornings, of mountain mist and young leaves brushed by rain. The flavours shift with each sip, opening and closing like a hand, offering sweetness, astringency, a whisper of flowers. We drink in silence, the canal moving slowly outside the window, the world shrinking to the steam rising from our cups and the slow ticking of water against stone. Time falls away. There is no hurry here, only breath and taste, leaf and water, moment and memory. After tea, we walk on deeper into Suzhou's quiet heart. The alleys grow narrower, the stones older and more worn. Overhead, the sky is a wide, soft grey, and the leaves of the willow trees trail into the canals like fingers testing the water's patience. We make our way to the Suzhou Silk Museum, housed in a low modern building surrounded by ancient plane trees. Inside, the air smells faintly of fabric and history. The story of silk is woven through every corridor here. Suzhou has been the heart of China's silk trade for over 2,000 years, its delicate threads travelling along the ancient Silk Road to Rome, to Persia, to kingdoms lost and found again. Here in the quiet light, we see the history unspool. First, the mulberry trees planted to feed the silkworms, then the tiny, voracious worms themselves, no bigger than a child's eyelash, spinning their fragile, endless thread. The cocoons gleaming like pearls in their baskets. The old wooden looms, massive, intricate, humming with the memory of 1,000 hands drawing thread into cloth. We watch a demonstration in one of the side galleries, a woman in a blue smock weaving on a loom that fills an entire room. The shuttle clicks and darts, the silk threads shivering under her hands. The cloth that emerges is luminous, a waterfall of light and softness. The museum holds robes once worn by emperors, their surfaces embroidered with dragons and phoenixes, their colours still vivid after centuries of careful keeping. Silk scrolls stretch across the walls, painting so fine that from a distance they seem almost real, Birds frozen mid-flight, mountains veiled in mist, rivers stitched into the silk with threads thinner than hair. We move slowly, touching nothing, breathing it all in. By the time we step back into the afternoon, the world feels softer, heavier, threaded through with stories we barely understand. Lunch finds us at a small noodle shop, where the only decoration is a long red scroll pinned above the door. We sit at a worn wooden table and order steaming bowls of Suzhou's famous noodles, so delicate they almost vanish on the tongue. They come bathed in a light broth fragrant with ginger and scallions, and topped with slices of tender pork braised until it falls apart under the lightest pressure. Outside, the canal drifts by, carrying with it the slow, murmured life of the town. The meal is simple and filling, a tether back to the earth after the floating silk dreams of the morning. As afternoon leans into evening, we find ourselves back near the water. A small jetty extends into one of the broader canals, where a handful of wooden boats bob gently in the tide. We hire one, a low, flat craft covered by a bamboo awning, and climb aboard. The boatman is old, his face carved into 1,000 creases, his hands strong and brown. He smiles without words and pushes off from the shore with a long, worn pole. The boat moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, through the still water. The town leans close around us, low white houses with black roofs, their walls reflected perfectly in the canal. Tiny stone bridges arch over the water, so low we must duck as we glide beneath them. The undersides of the bridges are worn smooth by time, the stone cool and wet where the sunlight never touches. Lanterns begin to glow in the windows, and at the corners of the streets, their reflections doubling and tripling in the darkening water. The boatman hums a low song, something wordless and old, and the sound blends into the rhythm of the pole dipping and rising, dipping and rising. The water slips past, the town breathes, the stars begin to prick through the soft purple of the sky. It feels like floating through a painting, like being folded into a story told without words. The boat drifts back to the jetty, just as the first real darkness settles. The lanterns along the canal bob gently in the breeze. The night smells of river mist, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet perfume of unseen blossoms. We walk slowly back toward the guest house, our footsteps muffled against the old stones. The town folds itself quietly around us, a soft cradle of water and shadow, and distant, glowing light. Inside our small room, the air is cool and damp. We leave the window open again and listen to the slow, endless murmur of the canal slipping by in the dark. The night holds us like a story paused, but not yet finished. Tomorrow, the last pages will turn. But tonight, the city dreams around us, slow and steady, stitched together by stone and water, silence and stars. Morning breaks in Suzhou beneath a quilt of soft mist. The sky is a smooth stretch of pale grey, and the canal outside the window has turned to silver, its surface barely stirring with the slow breath of the current. Somewhere nearby, the hollow tap of a bamboo pole echoes as a boatman pushes his craft along the narrow channel, the sound folding into the stillness like a heartbeat. We rise slowly, reluctant to disturb the delicate hush that holds the town in its hand. The air smells of river water and morning, cool and heavy against the skin. The courtyard below glistens with dew, and the stones are dark and slick with the night's breath. Breakfast waits at a small cafe we noticed the day before, tucked between a pottery shop and a calligrapher's studio. We sit at a low wooden table on a narrow balcony that leans out over the water, and the owner brings a small tray without needing to ask. There is a pot of smoky black tea, its aroma curling warmly into the chill air, and a plate of steamed buns filled with red bean paste, their surface delicate and glossy. The tea is strong, almost earthy, grounding us in the day. The buns are soft, yielding at the lightest touch, their sweetness understated but complete. We sip and eat slowly, watching the town stretch awake. Across the canal, shutters creak open. A woman throws out a basin of water that arcs in a perfect silver ribbon before splashing into the street. A boy in a yellow jacket walks along the far bank, kicking a stone ahead of him, his laughter threading through the heavy air. We finish breakfast and step back into the labyrinth of Suzhou. Today the city feels even older, even slower. As if knowing we are leaving, it has settled back into its deeper self, unhurried and watchful. We follow the old streets west beyond the busiest alleys and the tidy gardens to a place older than almost anything else here, a place where the heart of Suzhou beats low and deep in the earth. The path to Tiger Hill winds through quiet neighborhoods, past whitewashed houses spotted with moss, past tiny shrines tucked into the cracks between walls. The mist thickens slightly as we walk, clinging to the leaves and softening the edges of the world. Tiger Hill is not truly high, only a gentle rise covered in ancient trees and laced with worn stone paths. But to Suzhou it is sacred, a hill of stories and secrets, whispered through more than 2,000 years of history. At the foot of the hill, a small stream trickles through a grove of weeping willows, their branches trailing into the water like hands combing the current. An old stone bridge arches over the stream, so narrow and bowed that we have to walk single file to cross it. The stones of the path are old, cracked and polished by endless feet. Every step up the hill feels like walking backward in time. We pass stone tablets etched with faded characters, their surfaces worn down by centuries of rain and touch. We pass crooked pines, their roots clutching the rocks like desperate fingers. Somewhere ahead, a bell tolls, low and slow, folding into the mist. At the heart of Tiger Hill stands the Yunyan Pagoda, often called the Leaning Pagoda of China. It tilts visibly, a slight but unmistakable slant that seems somehow more graceful than ruinous, as if bowing politely to the earth. The pagoda is over 1,000 years old, its bricks darkened by rain and smoke, its edges softened by the patient touch of weather and time. Legend says that the hill hides the tomb of King Helu, a ruler from the spring and autumn period, and that the pagoda was built to mark and guard it. Standing beneath it, we feel the weight of those centuries pressing gently down. The air smells of wet stone, of pine resin, of something deeper, the scent of old earth turned gently by the slow, relentless hand of time. We climb partway up the stone steps that spiral around the base. From here, the view stretches out across Suzhou. The patchwork of tiled roofs, the silver veins of canals, the green shadows of gardens stitched into the city's body. The mist blurs the edges of everything, turning the world into a soft painting without lines. We sit for a while on a low wall near the pagoda, the stone damp and cold against our hands. Around us, the trees whisper and shift. A magpie calls once, then again, then falls silent. It feels like being at the center of something vast and slow, a place where time is not counted in hours or even years, but in the quiet rising and falling of breath. After leaving Tiger Hill, we drift back into the city, following smaller and smaller streets until we find ourselves in front of a gate half hidden by vines. The sign beside it is simple, Master of the Net's Garden. It is one of the smallest of Suzhou's classical gardens and perhaps the most perfect. Inside, the garden folds around itself like a paper fan. Narrow walkways paved in mosaic patterns twist between rockeries and ponds, no larger than a courtyard. Wooden pavilions perch at the edges of the water, their reflections trembling in the breeze. A tiny bridge shaped like a half-moon crosses a pool where koi flicker and vanish beneath the lily pads. Every turn offers a new perspective. A framed view of a pine tree stretching toward the sky, a sudden glimpse of a whitewashed wall painted with the shadows of bamboo, the carved outline of a moongate inviting us onward. The garden hums with quiet life, the splash of a fish breaking the surface, the whisper of bamboo leaves brushing each other in the wind, the soft tap of our footsteps on stone. At one corner of the garden, a pavilion opens onto a pool where the water lies still and heavy, reflecting the sky with a clarity so sharp it feels like falling into another world. We sit at the edge, watching the reflections shift and reform with every breath of the wind. The master of the nets built this place not to impress, but to soothe, to offer a refuge from the noise and ambition of the world beyond the garden walls. Sitting there, it is easy to believe we have left that world behind entirely. By midday, the sky brightens slightly, the mist lifting into a soft haze. We wander back toward the center of town and find a small restaurant hidden behind a wooden screen painted with plum blossoms. Inside, the air is cool and fragrant, with the scent of steaming rice and grilled fish. We order bowls of Suzhou-style noodles, thin and almost translucent, served in a broth light as air and sweetened with a hint of soy and ginger. Beside them comes a dish of lotus root, stuffed with sticky rice and drizzled with syrup. Delicate and surprising, a sweet echo of the gardens we have just left. We eat slowly, savouring the clean, clear flavours, the hush of the room, the slow murmur of the city beyond the open windows. After lunch, we drift once more through the old streets, letting the town carry us wherever it will. The sun hangs low and heavy in the sky, turning the white walls of the houses to gold. The canals gleam, catching and holding the light like cradled flames. The trees along the banks cast long shadows that ripple across the water with the slow pulse of the current. As evening begins to gather, we return to the water's edge one last time. The lanterns blink to life along the canals, red and gold and glowing softly. The reflections stretch and twist in the water, caught and carried by the slow turning of the tide. We find a quiet bench along the bank and sit, watching the last light slip away. The town settles into itself. The water hums against the stones. The night folds over the rooftops like a soft, worn quilt. We sit until the stars begin to emerge, faint and scattered, shy in the humid air. We sit until the boats pull back into their moorings and the musicians pack away their instruments. We sit until the last echo of footsteps fades down the narrow alleys. And when we finally rise, we carry Suzhou with us, in the hush of old stones, in the curve of a willow branch, in the slow, endless breathing of the canals. The city lets us go gently, the way a river releases a boat that has travelled with it for a long, sweet while. And we step into the night, stitched now into its quiet story forever. We hope you enjoyed this journey. Please follow us for more destinations, and don't forget to leave a review. It helps others find a peaceful place to drift off to. We'd also like to remind you that information in this episode may become outdated. Please verify with your own research if you plan on travelling to any of these lovely destinations. Until next time.